All right, guys, I've got the pre-postseason awards to give out, as well as clear up all these bubble situations as we head into the playoffs this week. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being in the league. I gotta say, I'm happy to still be in the league after all these scandals. So stoked about it, and I hope that these types of contributions can continue to make up for my heinous crimes against the Friends of Harper League. But I digress. First thing I want to do is kind of look back and take a look at draft grades. Okay, now I'm not looking at who drafted what and how it's attributed to their team. I'm literally looking at one page that's on the website where it shows who is on your team that you drafted versus who is a free agent acquisition versus who is acquired in a trade. And we have two teams that are playoff bound that have the highest amount of draftees on their team. Now, maybe some of these other ones do, but I didn't look at anybody that wasn't in the playoff picture. So the main ones, and obviously you could make a case to just hand all these awards over to Tucker Cook, who, beyond getting married, having his first child, is also first overall in the power rankings and leading the league in wins and points for and points against. So something we haven't probably ever seen before. And I think that you could make the case that Tucker Cook might be athlete of the year, person of the year in a Friends of Harbor kind of aspect. But basically what we see is that he has 6 players that he drafted that are on his roster currently. To give you some sort of frame of reference of what that means, RPO has 2 players that he drafted. Hillary Clinton Dix has 4. I have 3. Oswald has 5. The Style Boys have 5. Another team that's playoff bound that has a lot of players that they drafted and are actually starting for him is Team Slexy. And I don't know if that's whether because he's in law school, he hasn't had time to trade or joke or text, or he's very serious or what, but he finds himself kind of just outside of what I would say to be the top draft grade. And then our top draft grade, or sort of utilization of the people you drafted award, goes to Dustin Cassidy. And you look at another guy with a newborn who has really been excelling in fantasy this year. I don't know whether it's long hours, holding them, burping them, checking your phone at the same time. I don't know what contributes to this, but you look at 2 guys who've really had a lot of success this season, and both of them have a baby. So the rest of us should be ashamed because they've got this huge responsibility, and yet they continue to excel. So some of the best getting better, and he has 8 players who he drafted still on his roster. So pretty incredible. And one thing about New Shed season, he has not, at least based on the data here, I could be wrong, completed a single trade the entire season. It's all been free agent acquisition. We'll get to that a little bit later. The next award I want to give out is for the best pick, value pick in the draft. Okay, so this isn't a free agent acquisition. This is someone that you drafted that ended up being a lot better than where you picked them. And I think you could make a very strong case for the Style Boys taking Tyreek Hill, the number 1 overall receiver in the 3rd round, as being the best pick in the draft this year. But I'll give you some other ones that are pretty impressive. A lot of people would think Pat Mahomes was a free agent ad. No, he was taken in the 9th round by the Elder, and he was like the 150th pick or the 91st pick or something. So pretty incredible 9th round draft of Pat Mahomes. A 3rd round draft pick was Adam Thielen. So the 2nd, or maybe he's the 3rd overall receiver in fantasy points. He might be the 5th overall flex in fantasy this year, and he was taken in the 3rd round. Another great draft pick, and this one was by RPO Speedwagon, who subsequently traded him to the Bums, or somebody, I might be wrong on that, last week, or maybe it was the week before, but a 4th round draft of Juju Smith-Schuster, which who could have thought that he would be almost as prolific as Antonio Brown this season. So another great draft pick. And then of course we look at a 10th round pick and stash of Nick Chubb by myself as a pretty good draft pick there, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a tie for the best value draft pick. Style Boys and the Elder with Mahomes in the ninth and Tyreek Hill in the third, just really buying this Chiefs team and maybe even giving the edge a little bit to the Los Harpercitos with taking Pat Mahomes, the number one overall player in fantasy football, in the ninth round. What a steal. And I know you don't take quarterbacks early, but just the foresight to pick him. Nobody was thinking about drafting him, so really, really good pick there. All right, moving on. So that is the best pick. Now let's talk about the best ad. Now there is no mud here. This is clear cut. We've gone to this new format where you have to put in a bid, and you can be outbid for a fantasy a waiver edition as well as the waiver order. It's a little confusing to me still, but I really like it because it kind of forces you to not blow your whole load on something. But we look at New Shed Season, and if they go on to win the title here and the points for, people are going to look back and say, and especially the Los Harpercitos, they're going to look back and go, God damn it, I really should add to James Conner. And he's probably been thinking that all year long. But New Shed Season added James Conner for $0. And that is the best ad of the year. And if he goes on to win the title, people are going to say that's where he got it done. Now, he had a great draft. Obviously, second in the draft grid, second in utilization. 6 of his players, most of them starters, he drafted. And then also adding James Conner, basically stealing, the number 3, 4 overall running back for the season, right from under Harper's nose, who had a lot of faith in Le'Veon Bell. And obviously, we know how that turned out. But just a weird thing with Bell. We've never seen it before, I don't think. And then the best trade. Now, the best trade, there's been a lot of trades. I tried to look at a lot of them, but my favorite trade this year is something that has playoff implications, okay? And it was a couple of weeks ago where the Style Boys said, hey, I'm starting one running back, and then I'm starting somebody who's terrible, and it's cost me a couple of games, and I want to sneak into these playoffs and be dangerous. And they shipped Saquon Barkley to RPO Speedswagon, who basically, with an addition of Barkley, made his team look like a monster. And people don't know, but the Style Boys received Kerryon Johnson, who is like RB 12, 15, something like that. And he received Marlon Mack, who has been in part of a Colts offense that is absolutely prolific. So big congratulations to the Style Boys and RPO Speedswagon for making what I think is one of the most fair trades and one of the trades that made both teams better. So this isn't trade rape. This is a situation where trade actually made both teams trend upward. So pretty cool there. Moving on, those are pre-postseason awards. So you're looking at draft grades or draft utilization of players. A Team with No Name, Dustin Casti, and New Shed Season both have their newborns. Congratulations to both of you. And then you look at the best draft pick in Patrick Mahomes by the Los Harpercitos. The best ad, James Conner, New Shed Season. The best trade, Barkley for Mack and Johnson. All right, now let's get into the bubble situation. And I know that this video is getting a little long-winded, but let's be frank. Like, you guys have a lot of time on your hands, and you got plenty of time to watch me and this lovely beard, the hair, the grace, all of it. You're into it. So let's get into the bubble stuff. So let's talk about the matchups that matter this week. We've got myself versus Team Slexy, Team with No Name versus Oswood, the Bums versus Zozel. Now pay attention to that. They're both 5 and 7. That's going to come back later. Hillary Clinton Dix versus the Lego Men, RPO Speedswagon versus the Style Boys, and New Shed Season versus Wonder Woman Annual Sanders. Okay, so those are kind of the matchups that matter. There's a few other matchups that don't really matter, but let's get into it. As we look at the 8 seed, okay, this is the bubble to get into the playoffs, and this is maybe the most important. If you guys are on the bubble, really listen up. This is the 9:18 mark, and I'll post that so you guys can skip to this if you don't have time. But basically, Zozel with a win and a Style Boys loss will get into the playoffs. The Bums with a win and a Style Boys loss, or a win and a Style Boys victory, but him scoring 14.2 more points this week than the Style Boys, will get into the playoffs. The Style Boys with a win and a Bums loss, or a win and more points than the Bums this week, will get into the playoffs. So those are kind of muddy, but if I were to simplify it, what I would tell you is basically when we look at the order of points for in the tiebreaker, it goes bums, or it goes, I'm sorry, it goes Style Boys, bums, and then Team Zozel's way behind by like 100 points. So that's what you look at when you look at it. Now, the most interesting thing about this, okay, is that the bums play Team Zozel. So that's why it's that simple, is basically if the bums win and the Style Boys win, the bums have to score 14.2 more points than them to get to supersede them, okay? Now, let's talk about the 7 seed. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, okay? The 7 seed, we've got Team Oswood at 6-6, okay? If Oswood, he can drop to the 8 seed with a loss and a Style Boys or Bums win. Bums trail the Style Boys by 14.2 points. So if Oswood loses, the Bums beat Zozel, and Dayton beats RPO Speedswagon, then Oswood would be out of the playoffs. Okay, and then the seeding would probably go Style Boys, Bums, but if the Bums were to score 14.2 points, more points than the Style Boys, then they would be ahead. Oswood will be out with a Bums and Style Boys victory and a loss. Now, you're saying, who is Oswood playing? Oswood is playing a team with no name who is 7-5. So it's totally possible that Greg Oswood, and if anybody sees him, please let me know, because I haven't seen him in a long time. If he loses and the Bums beat Zozel and Style Boys upset RPO Speedswagon, he will be out of the playoff picture. Okay, so that's the 7 seed. That's the 8 seed. And more importantly, in the 8 seed, basically, if the Style Boys win and the Bums lose, Style Boys are in. If Zozel wins and beats the Bums and Dayton loses to RPO Speedswagon, Spencer Dahl, new league member, will be in the playoffs in his first year. So, and he has a pretty dangerous team if you look at his roster, okay? So that's the 7 and 8 seed. Now the 3 through 6 seed, absolutely anything could happen. As we look at the 3 through 6 seed, in the points for tiebreaker, a team with no name owns the tiebreaker for points for, then Slexy, then Hillary Clinton Dix, then Hyde Julio's Chubb. So even though Hyde Julio's Chubb, myself, has a 1-game lead, with a win and a Hyde Julio's Chubb, the highest tiebreaker team would win. So if a team with no name beats Team Oswood, then they will become the 3 seed. Okay, if that happens and the Bums and Style Boys win, Oswood will be out of the playoffs. So various scenarios to take a look at here, and that's kind of the 3 through 6 seeds. So you're looking at Hyde Julio's Chubbs, Hillary Clinton Dix, Slexy, and a team with no name. Now let's talk about those matchups. Hillary Clinton Dix has got the Lego Men. A team with no name has Oswood, and Hyde Julio's Chubb plays Team Slexy. So let's talk about that matchup. If Team Slexy beats Hyde Julio's Chubb, and those other teams, and Dix or a team with no name loses, then Martinez will move into the 3 seed. So there's a lot of shuffling and a lot of things that could happen with that. Too many iterations to kind of really talk about. So we'll finish with that. And one last note here, okay? If Wonder Emmanuel Sanders, who's been trending on the uptick, were to beat New Shed Season and RPO Speedswagon beats Dayton, Skowinski will be the 1 seed. If Skowinski loses to the Style Boys and Hyde Julio's Chubb beats Team Slexy, they'll have the same record. However, Team RPO Speedswagon has about 150 point lead in the points for, so they'll still remain the 2 seed. If New Shed Season loses to Wonder Emmanuel Sanders and Peyton beats Dayton, Skowinski will become the 1 seed, and he would face one of those bubble teams. So just to wrap up, and I know this has been 15 minutes, I hope you've enjoyed it. Lots of playoff scenarios, seeding, interesting bubble stuff this week. Stay tuned and send me trades.